If there's anyone in RR202 that can give a thumbs up that we're ready to go, that would be.
Wait,
I
can you
think I
see
see a
us?
thumbs up across the room. Okay, fair
Can
enough.
you see? I don't know. Actually, I just did that. I have no idea.
We'll run with it. That's fine.
Oh, we
Uh,
did.
well, I want to thank everyone for attending the seventh annual UW Radiology Lunch and Learn. My name is Ramesh Iyer, Vice Chair of Education. I'm also a pediatric radiologist at Seattle Children's Hospital. Um, So when I first started doing these, we were clearly virtual, and it was still fantastic to see everyone via screens, but certainly didn't offer the in-person aspect. And I think, which is I think one of the best parts of today's Lunch and Learn is the mingling that can happen, especially when some of our alumni and donors come to spend some time with us in the department. And of course, we have many of our former and current faculty members also online as well. So I want to thank everyone for coming today in our hybrid event. I'm apologizing I can't spend time with you today in person as I'm on clinical service over at our Bellevue Clinic for at Children's, but it's my pleasure to be here today again. So we are fortunate to have some of our presentations that were endowment and funded experiences. So Lindsay and Zong will present on their global health experiences in Tanzania involved with the Road to IR program. We also have Josh Kling talking about training radiology residents in Kenya. And then finally, Michelle and Nitin will talk about their research experiences attending the RSNA conference for their first time. So this is our sampling of our education endowment funds. We are very fortunate at the UW Department of Radiology to be recipients of very generous donations made by a number of our friends and family across the country and here in Seattle. You can see a number of notable names here of current and former faculty members, chairs, alumni. Again, it's really our sincere thanks on the behalf of the department to really be beneficiaries of your generosity and kindness to support our training programs. So again, it's my heartfelt thank you to all of our donors here today, as well as in absentia. So what do donations support? This is just an example of what they do support. E-anatomy site licenses for all of our trainees. We have travel grants to conferences this past year, including RSNA, as well as Society of Interventional Radiology. They offer support for travel to our global health rotations. Travel to national society meetings. We have just a sampling of those here, including RSNA, SIR, ACR, et cetera. Research material, including multimodality training, phantoms for musculoskeletal imaging, as well as portable ultrasound probes for iPads, and then training and student immersion experiences. So these are just an example of what your generous donations have brought to our trainees. So again, we offer our sincere thank you. Currently raising fund for our Chairs Fund for Excellence. So what that is, this has really been kind of advancing our mission to improve the health of the public using research-driven image-based care with, of course, compassion, expertise, and inclusiveness. It really allows our department the ability and the opportunity to respond to urgent needs, as well as fill in monetary gaps. These donations, of course, support world-class research, innovative teaching and learning opportunities, and really just overall betterment of the department. And, I think one of the most noteworthy roles has been this whole person support, um, providing our residents and faculty members and staff, the ability to really have that work-life balance as well, because we're developing people as well as professionals and radiologists. So we've got a URL or a barcode there that you could feel free to scan for those in the room as well as those at home to contribute today to continue to support our department in multiple ways. So again, it's a thank you on our behalf. A couple example pictures here of what our support has provided, or what your support has provided us. So this is on the left picture, members in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam. I think those are at the Road to IR picture, and I think you're seeing Lindsay and Zong there in the center. That they'll be talking with us in a little while. And then also at the SNMMI for our Future Leader Academy earlier this calendar year. And that is my last slide. And with that, again, thank you. And I want to turn it over to, I think first, Lindsay and Zong. I'm going to stop sharing there. Do we have Lindsay and Zong present? I can't see in the room, so it's hard to know who's there.
Yes,
We're just setting up the presentation. We'll be on shortly.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me okay from here?
Yes.
Great. Okay, well, thank you so much for having Zong and I today. I'm sure Zong was just here. He'll be right back. So we're going to talk about our experience with our Global Health Elective at Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, as part of Road to IR. Just off this bat, we're really grateful that we were able to have this experience, which is really unique, and I think helped inform, how we could potentially incorporate global health into our careers, and it really wouldn't have been possible without this funding. So thank you all. So Road to IR. So we traveled as part of Road to IR, which is a nonprofit that was established in 2018 to build sustainable IR training programs in East Africa for training interventional radiologists as well as nurse and techs. It was started at Muhimbili National Hospital in Dar es Salaam, which is where we traveled and where UW residents traveled last year as well. So graduates of this program are able to obtain a master's in interventional radiology and have gone on to practice in Tanzania, Uganda, and soon Nigeria. So kind of expanding that footprint beyond Dar es Salaam. So where we were, just to give you a snapshot of what things looked like. So Tanzania, it's a East African country, that little pin, 65 million people with an average age of 18 years old. So the population, and as you can imagine, kind of some of the diseases that we encountered were different than what we're accustomed to here. Life expectancy of 66 years. National languages are Swahili, as well as English at the secondary school level, but there's over 100 languages that are spoken day to day. And the GDP per capita is about 2% of what it is in the US. So it's quite a different practice environment. This is a picture of Dar es Salaam. It's a bustling metropolis, city of about 6 million people. So the need that kind of Road to IR recognized and that we're responding to is that there is a shortage of the healthcare workforce, and particularly radiologists in Tanzania. As of 2021, there were 60 total radiologists in the country, which is a little more than 1 per 1 million people. And as of now, only Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt in Africa have formal IR training programs. So there are no formal IR training programs in East or West Africa. So where we were at Louisville National Hospital. This is a national referral hospital, so it's a multi-specialty center that does have emergency medicine, pediatrics, cardiac specialists, orthopedics, even renal transplant. It's a 1,500 bed hospital and it's government and donor funded, but it is still resource constrained. And as a national referral hospital, it receives patients from all over the country, from smaller hospitals. So in terms of we were working within the interventional radiology department, and in terms of what that looked like, just to give you a snapshot for those of you who may have heard the presentation from Blaine and Kara last year. Last year they had one C-arm suite, an ultrasound procedure room, a CT procedure room that was shared with other CTs, and they were at that time building an angio suite. Since then, that angio suite has been up and running, so we were one of the first groups that's traveled there when they've had their fully functioning angio suite, so that was really cool to see how things are evolving and the infrastructure is being built. So in terms of the workflow, what a day looks like on the IR service. There were 5 fellows and 4 attendings. We would get in around 7 or 8 a.m. for a morning huddle, and we would run the list similar to what might happen at UW-IR. From 8 to 10 a.m., there would be clinic and prepping cases. The case prep took hours every morning. It was scrounging materials from around, working up the patients, many of the systems that we have in place here, or the checklists and kind of systems are still evolving. So things took a long time. Clinic was really interesting. They would call patients into this room, into our workroom, and talk with them. Many times there was no schedule. Patients would come in the beginning of the day and they would stay the whole day. And they would sometimes be called in multiple times throughout the day after getting labs or after discussing with other providers. And then sometime later in the day, a plan would be made. So it's interesting to see that workflow. Around 10 a.m., some cases usually got started. There's one ultrasound room and one angio suite, as I mentioned, and usually between 2 and 4 cases per day in each of those. And then at the end of the day, there'd be an evening huddle with all the fellows and attendings and to debrief the day. And sometimes some education would happen either then or at the morning huddle. Here's just a few pictures to get us started. These are some of the attendings here, Dr. Eric and Beloa. And then this is me, and I think this is Beloa here putting on lead to go into one of the cases. So what was our role? So we were there to both support the education as well as kind of the hands-on that was happening day to day. So in terms of education, we would take part in some hands-on teaching in the room as well as morning teaching conferences. We played a large role in case planning. As I mentioned, for most cases, whereas here, usually there's kind of a set list of the things you need for each case, and there, it was really the fellow's responsibility to gather any wires, catheters, needles, et cetera, that you might need for that case. And so we played a large role in kind of helping them to figure out what you would need for a specific case, and then finding those in the various storage areas. They're dealing with mostly donated materials, so we were practicing our German and when trying to figure out what wires would be equivalent to wires we're used to. So there's certainly challenges that they are adept at navigating, but challenging nonetheless. And then we would help out with cases. Sometimes, so this picture here, it's Ethan, and then there's me back here, and sometimes we'd be scrubbed into cases and helping out. Sometimes we'd be running the ultrasound machine. They have a few techs, but they have a shortage of techs, so that was actually a big role we could play, is helping optimize the imaging and serving that role. And then Ethan, who is our attending, who graciously led us, he did much of the hands-on teaching in the room, helping those fellows as well. Here's just a few more images of our experience. You can see here on the top right, this is us Ethan giving a talk on pelvic injury. They currently don't have any trauma because they don't have the capacity to take call. But hopefully, you know, down the line, that will be something that can be developed. And then this is me essentially serving as the tech in this case. And you'll see, you know, the setup is quite different. They don't have ultrasound gel. We use betadine. We use almost everything is reusable. So good exposure to see how you can do things without necessarily needing all of the tools that we had here. Again, this is us at the back table. This is Zong running the control room. So challenges. I've spoken to some of this, but this is kind of, as I mentioned, some of our roles just scrounging up these wires and catheters. So this is us doing that. There's language barriers. This is something that we I didn't know a lot about, but while technically English is the language of the hospital, most patients speak Swahili. And but for some, that's even a second language. Meanwhile, while all of the Tanzanian attendings speak Swahili, there are also trainees who are from other African countries, such as Nigeria, who don't speak Swahili. So and there's no formal translator. So clinic can be challenging because either an attending or a fellow needs to play the role of translator when you have fellows and patients who do not speak the same language. And that's not even to mention kind of patient, both health awareness as well as awareness of IR. Referring clinician knowledge, they have done an incredible job of kind of bringing other clinical awareness to other clinical specialties that the role IR can play. This picture here is Dr. Eric and then us at Liver Tumor Board, which they participate in every week. And so there's been a lot of great discussions with the liver surgeons, for instance, about, you know, when TIPS would be indicated, or when a Y90 would be indicated, or well, not a Y90, a chemoembolization would be indicated. And they are starting to do those procedures. So they're doing a really incredible job of building that. I mean, as we know, it's a challenge even here sometimes with referring providers not knowing what IR can offer. Patient ability to pay, there's some insurance, but patients were also on the hook for for payments, and sometimes even a small payment. They would need, you know, weeks to rustle up because people don't have cash on hand. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of different disease patterns. So Zong is here, so he can take us through all our fun photos from the end.
Yeah, sorry, we got stuck in a fluoro exam, but yeah, so on screen left top there, that's just the whole group from left to right. We have two of the senior fellows, Ethan, Lindsay, Aza, who's one of the earliest IR fellows that graduated from Mumbili. She was like one of the medical directors of the IR team there. There's me, there's another senior fellow and two of the junior fellows. And down here is when the three of us went out for dinner on one of the first nights, and just more pictures with all the fellows. And when we kind of all went out for a team dinner afterwards. And yeah.
So here's a little info just about Rota IR if you're interested in learning more or getting involved. Thank you so much. If anyone has questions, we're certainly happy to answer.
Thanks so much, Lindsay and Zong. That was fantastic. I want to open it up the panel to questions, both in person as well as online. If you're online, please feel free to raise your hand, and we will get to you.
How did you work around the language barrier? That seems like such a challenge.
No translator, no official translator. Yeah, so all of the attendings and the fellows, they all spoke English. And when they switched to Swahili, they would then translate for us. Sometimes we felt a little left, in clinic, sometimes you don't know what's going on, and so you can just kind of, you'll hear occasional English words, which is always interesting, like, well, dialysis fistula, and you're like, this is about a fistula. But they were able to accommodate us similar to the way that they accommodated the Nigerian residents, but it certainly makes it harder to form relationships with patients when you don't speak the same language.
I have a question. So obviously supplies are a challenge. Were you guys always able to do what you wanted to do, like improvise with materials you had, or were there cases where you just had to abort because you didn't have a certain catheter or wire?
Yeah, so I don't know if Lindsay's already touched upon this, but one of the last cases we were scheduled to do was a TIPS. And for TIPS, you need a like pretty long stiff wire, like a 180, 280 amplats, which is like one of the most common IR wires you can find. But that is the one thing that they did not have in like their storeroom. We found like all these really high-end devices and really high-end stuff that just weren't donated. And what I kind of realized is a lot of the times, when medical stuff is donated to them, it's stuff that's left over or not used in our IR departments. So it's all the more rare stuff, but they might not have just your basic, run-of-the-mill amplats wire that we have bajillions of here. So there were some cases where we definitely were just like, oh, well, we don't have it and we can't really do anything with it. But it was after like 30, 45 minutes of searching the storeroom. So, yeah.
Are there other programs to donate? Because, we have this issue, well, MSK biopsy devices, like some of the kits expire.
Yeah.
Which I don't really know if,
Yeah, it's tricky too, because they used to take all the expired stuff, but the Tanzanian government is also now kind of, and I don't fully understand, again, there's a lot of things that are kind of over what I know, but I think they're cutting down on like taking expired devices because they don't want things that wouldn't be used here. So, yeah, it's challenging.
because I don't even know what some of these expiration dates mean. I mean, obviously, if something's like
Right.
10 years old, you may not want to use it, but a biopsy device that's, a month overdue, that we're just gonna end up throwing in the trash, that's probably perfectly fine. Yeah.
We've got Matt Kogut has raised his hand online.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello? You're great. Thanks so much for sharing that. That was really fantastic. You guys took a lot of great photos. In the spirit of always trying to improve things for those that come after us, partially as PD, I know we want to continue this experience. My two questions are, is there anything you would do differently or any suggestions to improve for future residents on our end? And then on their end, is there anything we can do to make it better for the recipients of our volunteer work? Other than obviously you mentioned the product challenges.
I think, I think it's definitely important for us to go as part of a team with attendings. I think, if we were able to bring technologists too, that could actually be helpful. I think the other thing that would be helpful, and we did try and perhaps not effectively enough, is to kind of like figure out if there's a specific educational need or something we can, that we can speak to when we're there, because when we were there, for instance, we realized that a lot of what they do is dialysis work, and I think it would have been helpful if beforehand, we kind of did some on-the-fly teaching, but it would have been helpful if we could have identified that before and maybe prepared some presentations or had, and I think Josh, you actually may have done some of this, and so can speak to this. And I think that, so if we had had like a specific thing that we could have brought, and we could have brought examples of those devices, things like that. It's challenging when you've never been there before to know exactly what you need, and so and it was also just hard for us to get in touch with people ahead of time, partly because of the time difference and because everyone's busy. But if we, I think there is opportunity to do that better.
Great, thanks very
Thank
much.
you. That's great. So perhaps we could work on getting somebody taking a didactic lecture or something next time they go. That's great. And yeah, we'll obviously work on what our attending participation is going to be moving forward. Thanks, guys.
Great, well, I'm not seeing any additional hands raised on the online participants. I'm not certain if there's any additional questions for Lindsay and Zong in the room.
Hey, Ramesh, this is Chuck.
Hey, Dr. Orman.
Hey, great presentation, Lindsay and Zong, and obviously a very worthwhile experience. We've had people from our residency go to Tanzania for a long time, including Matt, who you just heard from. Did anyone reminisce about those characters when they were there, and did they leave any good or bad impressions?
I don't think we heard anything about Matt.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Orman. I was, just so you know, I was at I leave a big wave behind me, but I was at Kilimanjaro Christian Medical Center in a more remote area than Dar es Salaam. So they wouldn't remember me at this particular hospital.
Well, your big wave might have gone all the way from Moshi to Dar es Salaam.
Thank you.
They did remember the group from UW that went the year before. So continuity is good. Hopefully they'll remember us next year. And we'll be able to put any future residents that go in touch with some people there to hopefully, like I said, prepare some stuff beforehand.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dr. Orman. All right, well, I think in the interest of time, we can probably move on to Josh, if that's okay. Josh, I'm thinking, I don't see you, but you're probably in the room over there.
Hey, Ramesh, yes, I am here. I am just setting up my presentation. Give me one moment here. All right, I'll get started if everyone's ready. Hopefully at some point, my mentor, Dr. Hubert Russell, will come in. He's on clinic today, so he's probably reading out some residents right now. So I am thrilled to tell you all about my wonderful life-changing experience I had in Nairobi, Kenya. With the help of the Norman Endowment Fund and my mentor, Dr. Hubert Russell, I was able to travel to this beautiful place and go to this hospital, Aga Khan University, and work with the Department of Radiology for my month between January and February. All right, so a quick outline for the, actually, you can let her, she's one of the residents.
Oh.
Please. So just a quick outline about my time there. Kind of gonna take an outside-in type of approach, give you all a little bit of background about Kenya, how medicine looks like in Kenya, cancer epidemiology and demographics in Kenya. Come into Nairobi specifically, come down a little bit further into the Department of Radiology there, and also my specific role within the Department of Radiology at the Aga Khan University. There are some pictures of my time there. On screen left is the medical school right across the street from the hospital, and on screen right is just a random placard I found within Nairobi National Park, which Fun fact, Nairobi is the only capital city in the world to have a national park in the city limits. So the access to nature is truly like unparalleled, same level as Seattle, if not better, I say. All right, so let's talk about Kenya, right? My colleagues here talked about Tanzania, you know, being a sub-Saharan East African nation, you'll find a lot of similarities between these two countries. Kenya is a bit smaller, population is just over 56 million, life expectancy is just shy of 70 years, and the national languages are Swahili and English. Something I think I'm gathering from conversing with my colleagues here is in Kenya, a lot more people do speak English, and I think talking to patients is hard, but talking to other clinicians and radiologists was actually super easy. And actually a huge blessing because I got to learn a lot from them in return. There are 43 ethnic tribes to Kenya. And something I learned that I thought was really sweet is there is a huge Indian population in the country of Kenya. And so all of the Kenyans native there say jokingly, oh yeah, there are 44th tribe. That goes to say also the Indian food in Kenya was incredible. Never been to India, but this was the best Indian food I've currently had in my short life. Time zone, it's 11 hours ahead of where we are now. So communicating with people back home was a little difficult, but we got through. This population density map, just want to show you all. Darker color means more people live there. Kenya as a country, you can see Nairobi here, South Central Kenya, very densely red, largest city in the country, very densely populated. We have other pockets of dense population along the western border of Kenya with Lake Victoria, and then a third pocket in Mombasa here on the coastal part of Kenya on the Indian Ocean. This statistic surprised me. It is a rapidly developing nation. I mentioned already that the population is just over 56 million, but the UN projections that by 2050, it'll be greater than 85 and will surpass 100 million by 2070. So that is to say, it is a rapidly developing nation. There is a bunch of people there and a huge health need as well. Just to kind of cone down into the types of things I was looking at as a radiologist there, you'll see that there's a bunch of differences, but also some similarities to what we see with respect to human mortality here in the States. Simplified, infectious disease, as you might imagine, is the largest contributor to mortality for Kenyans. Cardiovascular disease and cancer follow as second and third. As a future pediatric radiologist, the fact that neonatal conditions kill both males and females at the highest rate is truly heartbreaking. We did a lot of cancer imaging at this hospital, so I kind of wanted to give you all a taste of the kinds of cancers we were seeing. Again, there's a lot of similarities to what we have here, but also a bunch of differences. You'll see that for males, prostate cancer is the most common cancer, and for females, breast is the most common cancer. Same as the States. And now this would take a whole other discussion to get into the details of, but something that was truly also heartbreaking is that cervical cancer is the second most common cancer for women, being that this is a cancer we screen for routinely in the States and can take care of with preventative healthcare. But these were the cancers we were looking at when we were reading our PET CTs of the team. So I'll focus in a little bit more now to the city of Nairobi. I fell in love with this city. It's a gorgeous city, and it's a metropolis by any standard. Its population is greater than 4 million. That's about the size of LA proper. Metropolitan skyscrapers in the central business district, and then slums just next door, just like any other developing city. What I found most pleasant during my stay there was the climate. So what I can show you all here is this equator, right? So you would think Nairobi being 70 miles just south of the equator would probably be more like Dar es Salaam, hot, humid, muggy. But because it is at an altitude of about 6,000 feet, similar to Denver, the weather was actually quite tempered by that. We don't talk about seasons like spring, winter, fall, spring there. We talk about wet season versus dry season. And I was fortunate enough to go in January, February, where it was predominantly a dry season. And if you can see here, the lowest temperature I was personally dealing with was a balmy 58. And the hottest temperature I personally felt my time there was low 80s. It was beautiful. It was a wonderful time. I mentioned already that it's the only capital city in the world with a national park in the city limits. So before I go into my specific work, I just wanted to help you all fall in love with Nairobi the same way I did. So these are just pictures of my days off. Like I said, national park within the city borders, so I was able to go to this elephant orphanage. That's where you can see this baby rhino Rafa and these two baby elephants playing. I didn't actually know elephants played with each other. That was really cute to see. Any coffee connoisseur probably knows some of the best coffee in the world actually comes from Kenya. And so I had my fair share of this delicious coffee. Down here on the bottom too, I guess all I can say about this is I have these two types of plants as a house plant. They're puny, they're tiny. I'm doing my best to take care of them, but just seeing them the way nature intended is kind of breathtaking. A few more pictures from my time there. I loved all the flowers, I loved the greenery, I loved getting to meet the people, and I loved taking the pictures of the animals. For the sake of time, I won't dwell too much on it, but quick fun fact that I think Kenya has the, of anywhere in the world, the most dense population of the endangered black rhino. That's one of them there. I hope these play. All right, so I just want to give you a scale of how metropolitan this city is. There are legit huge skyscrapers. I'm a amateur photographer, so please excuse the shakiness. This was one of the coffee farms I went to on one of my days off to get a tour of how they pick the coffee beans and how they process them for consumption. This was a beautiful day, just so green. You can see that the soil is like just a different color than what we see here in the States. It's red, it's rich with nutrients. That makes the food taste a lot better there as well. This last one is from the Aga Khan Medical School, the 10th floor. I am taking a shaky video, it was windy, of the hospital across the street. So you'll see down there, I'm panning, that's a wing of the hospital. And then just panning on the hospital more. It's a pretty large hospital, nowhere near as large as my colleague's one in Dar es Salaam, but I'll talk a little bit more about it shortly. All right, so the Aga Khan University Hospital, the Nairobi branch. So it is one of the major academic institutions in the country of Kenya, one of 4 major academic centers in Nairobi proper. It has about 300 beds. It's a quaternary care private hospital. It has a public wing dedicated to the underserved and underinsured. With respect to the types of cases they see, as a quaternary care hospital, it gets subspecialty referrals from all over Eastern Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. There are about 900,000 patient visits annually, and as it stands currently, 8 different radiology training programs there. Residency programs there. Radiology, family med, internal, peds, OB-GYN, path, anesthesia, and surge. And actually I got to meet some of the family medicine residents my time there too, which was wonderful actually, getting to see how all these other residents lived, not just the radiology ones themselves. I mentioned that the med school is just across the street. That was newly built too. And I think that's an excellent opportunity, similar to UW with the medical school kind of integrated into the hospital and get students involved sooner, seeing all these medical things. That's my badge on screen left and a picture of the hospital on screen right. I wanted to send a special shout out to my mentor, Dr. Hubert Vassell, without whom I don't think this would have been possible. I'd like to say specifically that he actually established a relationship with this university radiology department years before the pandemic. And he went there pre-pandemic and started this relationship. Obviously, COVID kind of derailed a lot of things, but he shifted, and starting with the COVID pandemic, he has been giving a weekly lecture to the trainees here every Thursday night, 9 o'clock his time, so like 8 o'clock their time. So yeah, these are just pictures of the residents. They call him Prof. It's awesome. With the respect to the structure of the radiology department there, they have a chair. They have what we would call like attending physicians. They call consultants. These are essentially radiologists who basically had to leave Kenya to get a fellowship training and then come back to Kenya to be the expert in their given reporting system. After that, we have I don't know what they are technically called. I think of them more as like junior faculty. These are attendings that have finished residency but have not yet decided on a fellowship and are doing, general attending work before they eventually possibly go on to fellowship. Then we have the residents who I spend the bulk of my time with, currently 13 in the class. I'll talk about the structure of their training in a bit. And they have a nuclear medicine fellowship allowing 2 to 3 residents per year, and it's a 2-year fellowship. These are just pictures from different dinners we went to with the department. Lots of laughter, just a really great fun group of people to be around. Sorry if that picture's a little too much for lunch, but I just wanted to show about the facilities in this institution, right? So we have a 3 Tesla MR 1.5. They have 1 CT scanner, and they're currently actually installing a second dual energy CT scanner. I thought this was awesome because outside of YouTube videos, I've personally never seen the inside of our CT machines. And it's wild. It's a trip seeing it in person, not just on a YouTube video. They have a PET CT. They're the only institution in, I think, Eastern Africa that has a cyclotron. So, that helps them make their FDG radiopharmaceuticals so that they can do the FDG PET CTs and interpret them on site. Digital radiography, mammography with tomosynthesis, and ultrasound suites. I'll touch on this a little bit more, but in America, where ultrasound acquisition is kind of put onto a technologist and we serve more as an interpreting role, that's not the case there. The ultrasound acquisition is actually done by the residents themselves. So pictures of some of the residents here, and talking about the training program there. It is a 4-year residency program, just like here. Each rotation's about 4 weeks, similar to how we do it here. What I found most interesting is a week before our visit, the entire program got accredited by the ACGME International Accrediting Body. So what does that mean? That means that a similar equivalent body as the ACGME came to this program, evaluated their caseloads, evaluated the training they get, and saying this is equivalent to something that could happen in the States. So I think that's a huge deal because it's saying that the training that they're getting here is incredible. Obviously, it's a smaller program, 4 residents per year, but, and I've seen it myself, the training they do get is really incredible. Call structure, I think, is what was differing the most. Similar to us, the first year residents don't take any solo call, but towards the end of the year, they take a buddy call type of system. Instead of a night float type of situation like we have here, the residents essentially take turns doing a 24-hour shift each day, which is a lot. Because, they come to service at 8 a.m., go to lecture, do their clinical work, 5 p.m. everyone leaves, they get sign out, they stay overnight, read all the studies, go to lecture next morning, and then read out what they're attending. So these 24-hour shifts are actually a daunting 30 or even more sometimes. I think I have hopefully a little bit of time to do this. I just wanted to showcase a day in the life of one of the residents I clicked with the most. This is Dr. Stephen Adet. He's one of the 2nd-year residents, so just started taking call. Currently on his ultrasound rotation this block. You can see him here answering the phone before he's about to physically do the ultrasound acquisition for a 3rd trimester OB patient. He's also the class ambassador, meaning that he's kind of the face of the program, the one they send out to greet new people and talk to different agencies because he's a good talker. On the day that I'm choosing to follow him into life, he essentially wakes up a little before 7 a.m. He's fortunate enough to live close enough to the hospital where it only takes him 15 minutes to get there. And for those of you who have never been to Nairobi, rush hour traffic is insane. I am afraid of the traffic there. There are no stop signs and people somehow figure it out. It's a beautiful organized chaos, but people make it work. Essentially, he gets to work a little before 8 a.m. and he's also, as the ambassador, the head tech guy. So he's the one that you can see here setting up our lectures that Hubert was giving this morning. And he was on call this specific day. So on top of doing all these ultrasound scans and acquiring the images, he had to stay overnight. And I saw him the next morning for lecture. Still had a bunch of energy though, so that is quite admirable. A little bit more about what I was specifically doing here. Peer-to-peer teaching and learning, I think, is the best way I can describe it. Every day I was on a different service paired with the resident who was on that service for that month. And depending on the training level of that resident, I would kind of cater what I did to be most helpful to them. So as you can imagine, a more junior resident, I would be teaching search patterns to, a lot of them asking my approach for a CT temporal bone, which I had to brush up on because I don't remember all the times. But it was great. We learned together. For more senior residents, I would talk to them about differential considerations, and a lot of times they would throw in a lot of infectious disease differentials that I just don't really think about. It's more of an academic exercise here in the States to throw out tuberculosis. You can see it every now and then at Harborview, but the level to which you see it there and that it's real is just palpable. Daily morning lectures, noon lectures, and 5 p.m. lectures at the end of the day. The weeks we were there, these were given by Hubert, Dr. Safiacini, and myself. Some of the lectures I gave specifically were kind of the lectures I would have given to R2s that the R3 class does. So I did some entry level upper extremity trauma, blunt abdominal trauma, facial trauma, showed them my search patterns and how Li Wu taught me how to read facial trauma, congenital aortic anomalies, pediatric case conference, which I found really fun, and spine infection trauma. But that's not to say that it was just me teaching all these residents. It was truly a two-way street. They're teaching me about their experiences and, radiology practice in Kenya as a whole and the more metropolitan Nairobi. And just hearing how they have to think about very wide differentials is really, really incredible. Something I wanted to touch upon is just how special this relationship is. And that's kind of all thanks to everyone here supporting this endowment. I don't mean to embarrass my colleague on the other side of the table here, but I actually have here Lynette Barassa on this table. She's actually one of the chief residents there at the Aga Khan University Hospital, doing her rotation with us and our nuclear medicine and neuroradiology departments. Something I'd like to try to set up for next year as a fellow is maybe getting them the opportunity to come to our pediatric hospital for some of their rotations. And hopefully lay the seeds for future residents behind me to go back to Nairobi and work with the department in the future. Lastly, thanks for bearing with me. Just wanted to say, asante sana nafurahi kukuona. That's just Swahili for thank you very much. It's really good to see you. Just a couple of final thoughts on global health and why I'm so thankful. Any global health to be successful, an accessible initiative has to be sustainable. It's really important to want to give things to people, and that's needed. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that real global health initiatives work with existing communities and infrastructures and are sustainable. And the tenet of sustainability, I think, is a longitudinal relationship, and that's something I really hope we can build with this radiology department in Nairobi. So thank you everyone for your time. If there's time for questions, if I went over, that's fine too. But I appreciate all of you.
Thanks so much, Josh. That was fantastic. I think I see Hubert on the line if you wanted to chime in, Hubert.
Yes, nice presentation, Josh. It was a pleasure having you come with us to Nairobi. And after I left, I got echoes of the impact you had. It was wonderful, not just the relationships you built, but the time you spent teaching and imparting your knowledge with a great deal of humility. I wanted to pick up on one thing that you just said. Global health is about sharing what we know with humility and being receptive to learning from our colleagues overseas, because they teach us a lot. They have a different spectrum of disease, different constraints, socioeconomic and others. And that's how we established this long-lasting relationship. And as Josh mentioned, I went there for the first time in 2018, invited by a friend of mine who was chair of internal medicine there, and to establish initial relationship, which is a must if you're going to want to share and exchange. And I've ever since taught every Wednesday night in the evening for them. A few have helped me, Alp Ostek, Safiacini, and a few other occasional colleagues have given lectures. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we have also started the first fellowship at Aga Khan University Hospital in Nairobi, which is in nuclear medicine. And it's a 2-year fellowship. And their the first fellow came to spend a few weeks with us, but there are currently two new fellows in the program. And we have been hosting their 3rd-year residents for 6 weeks, either in nuclear medicine or neuroradiology or combination thereof. And we all set to have them rotate in peds. It was not possible during COVID, but while Safia Chini was still at Children's, she worked on that to get and with you, Ramesh, I believe, to get the process rolling. And with, I believe, Alp is taking it over, and I hope that Joshua will be invested so that the residents from Nairobi have an extra rotation as an option for them to spend time in during their 6 weeks in Seattle. And thank you to all of you who have welcomed the Kenyan residents within our department.
Thanks so much, Hubert. Any other questions or comments for Josh? Either in person or online? All right. Well, thank you very much, Josh. And then I think our final presentation today will be by Michelle and Nitin talking about their experiences extending RSNA for the first time.
Thanks, Ramesh, and thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to this wouldn't have been possible without the funding that we got from the Gorman endowment and all the support from within the department. So thanks everyone. We wanted to talk about our experience at RSNA, which is not in another country, although the weather did make it seem like it could have been. There's a few photos from the conference. It was great to meet up with some colleagues from the UW radiology program and elsewhere. It's always a fun experience, and we have a photo here from the UW radiology reception, which was amazing. Really fun time to meet some of the alumni and former members of the program. So we just wanted to highlight some of the work that we did and presented at RSNA. So this is a project that Puneet and I did, broadly about the ergonomics of the different devices we use at the workstation, and then trying to just rethink how we can improve our productivity and longevity by choosing the right types of devices. This is a really fun project, and I can take you through a few slides from our presentation. So a big portion of it was centered around making it accessible to reprogram gaming mouses and keyboards. And actually, this one is based on the Logitech G502 mouse that we have at all our workstations at work. I think most of us tend to just use this like we would with any other mouse, but the truth is that it's very easy to reprogram shortcuts onto the mouse and improve your functionality at the workstation. So a lot of things that would require you to hit keys on the keyboard, you can do it without even moving your hands, which throughout the course of the day will save you a lot of time and just really streamline your workflow. So we had a few slides here that describe at a high level how to remap different keys onto your mouse in the Logitech software and in Visage. And we provided a few sample profiles to just get folks up and running, and just, give a good concept of how we can improve our productivity with the gaming mouse. We had similar tutorials for the keyboard as well. We also highlighted this website we created. So we called it Tech Tools, that gives a overview of a lot of different devices that we personally were able to, get and test out. And we published some brief reviews as well to try to help radiologists decide, what devices are, worth their investment, and, what is really out there and available to help us improve our productivity. So, we reviewed things that we already have at our workstation, like the power mic, excuse, the cost is not correct.
I was like, is that 30?
It is, it's
I was like,
expensive.
whoa.
And then we compared it to a lot of other devices that are compatible with the software that we use, including, headsets, microphones, different types of gaming, mice, keyboards, things like that. And we just published some candid reviews on how we felt that they performed at radiology tasks, to help people choose what kind of devices they could get to kind of augment their workflow. And one of our goals that we would like to see down the line is that a lot of these devices that we tested were made specifically with computer gamers or video editors in mind, but other than the power mic, there's not a bunch of devices that are made specifically for radiologists. So we're hoping that we can create some buzz about this topic, and hopefully once the companies that design and manufacture the devices realize that there are radiologists out there who really are interested in products like that, hopefully one day we can see, a kind of bespoke radiologist focused mouse or keyboard, and we can have some further improvements in how productive we are with our devices. Here's one more project that Puneet and I did. This one we collaborated with some surgeons in the gynecology department, as well as colorectal surgery, who do a lot of work with patients with pelvic floor disorders. We wanted to put together, a project on MR difficography technique and interpretation that's driven by how our reports will influence surgical management. So, we relied heavily on our surgical colleagues to help us figure out how we can, provide meaningful interpretations of these imaging studies. And then we included some, helpful algorithms about how the results of the MR difficography could guide treatment. So I have a few representative slides here. So we discussed some common pathologies that could be encountered on these types of studies, with some, representative images, and then a big portion, of course, was understanding the management of these pathologies, and what the key findings were that need to be reported. We also wanted to make it easy for anyone who is inexperienced with these exams to be able to get up, get started and dictate it. This is a really busy slide, but basically it summarizes in one slide everything that's really needs to be reported for an MR difficography exam and kind of a sample template. So, hopefully this would be a good reference to someone who's, just starting to read these exams or is interested in kind of improving the dictation and reporting. And then we had some algorithms here as well. I think may have been a problem with the animation on this slide, but we, wanted to again provide a quick reference and an easy summary of how we manage pelvic organ prolapse, and just to help us put in context the different findings that we may encounter on an MR difficography exam. And this was a really valuable experience to, collaborating with the surgical providers and then kind of learning at a deeper level what the impact is of, when we put out a report, how they really use that information to manage the patients. And I'll hand it over to Michelle.
So I'm Michelle, one of the PGY3 residents. I attended RSNA this year to present one of the projects that I worked on with Lee Wu, who was one of our neuroradiology BA attendings. Our project was flipped classroom teaching in radiology resident education, a multi-year assessment of resident performance. So the goal of this project was to assess the effectiveness of flipped classroom teaching for PGY2 radiology residents by comparing their performance on standardized exams at 2 separate institutions. So as a little bit of background, as many of us here know, radiology education for residents in person primarily takes place both at the workstation and also in the form of didactic lectures from our faculty. And there's been some literature that has shown that this sort of method of teaching is associated with poor retention of knowledge for students. And this is really important in an academic institution like UW, where increasing clinical demands and administrative burdens really raises the question of whether or not the most effective use of everyone's time just in terms of the faculty, who are the ones giving the lectures and doing the teaching, and also for residents, if this is the best way they can learn. So a potential solution that has shown promising results in the medical student setting is something known as flipped classroom teaching. And essentially this sort of methodology really flips on its head traditional teaching, where instead of having sort of faculty deliver in-person passive lectures, a lot of that lecture material is students will watch it on their own time at home, and then the time that they spend in person with faculty is doing more sort of active, engaging learning in the medical setting. That would be going through cases or looking through different patient charts. And as I mentioned, this has shown positive results in the medical student setting with medical student radiology rotations. But looking through the literature, it hasn't really been studied or published about in the residency setting. So as part of the methods for this project, we looked at 2 different institutions. Institution A, flipped classroom teaching has been used for one of the core PGY2 rotations. And this essentially involves for residents almost every night of the rotation watching 10 to 30 minute pre-recorded lectures. And then there are supplemental readings and cases that you can go through. And then the following day in person, there is dedicated time set aside for the residents on that service to go through different clinical cases with the faculty. So sort of at a high level, under this sort of setting, faculty can really have a great opportunity to assess different areas of weakness of the residents. And residents have the opportunity to really integrate real-time what learning they have done prior to before. And then in the second institution that we looked at this for, flipped classroom is not used, and it's more of that traditional teaching that. So we looked at the RAD exam scores from 5 PGY2 core rotations from 2018 to 2020. As I mentioned at institution A, one of the rotations consistently has used that flipped classroom methodology, and for the other rotations, it is again the traditional didactic teaching. At institution A, we also looked at the post-rotation surveys where residents are asked a number of different questions, including the educational value of the rotation and sort of asking about how efficiently their time was used during the rotation. We did a few different types of statistical analysis, mostly being ANOVA to look at scores within institution A and institution B. And then we did a multifactorial analysis to look at the influence of 3 different types of independent variables on the exam scores. So this is a table just briefly summarizing the exam scores at the 2 institutions. So at institution A at the top, you can see that flipped rotation, the mean score for the RAD exams was about 80%, and this was statistically higher than the other rotations. And then at institution B, within those scores, the traditional rotation number 1 was statistically lower than all of those scores just within their institution. So when we did the multifactorial analysis, it did show that the main effect of rotation, so all those like 10 different rotations, did have a significant effect on exam scores. But when you look at the institution or the teaching method being traditional rotation versus flipped rotation, there was also statistical significance. And then when we looked at the resident feedback at institution A, you can see with that red line, the residents rated it more educationally valuable compared to the other rotations. So that was statistically significant, but there was no difference in whether or not they felt their time was spent efficiently. So sort of wrapping this all together, we found no difference in the RAD exam scores between flipped classroom versus traditional teaching between the 2 different institutions. But within institution A, the exam scores was higher for the flipped classroom compared to most of the traditionally taught rotations. And for the flipped rotation, residents did perceive it to be more educationally valuable compared to traditional rotation. So overall, at a high level, flipped classroom teaching is at least as effective as the traditional teaching model, and it is associated with higher perceived educational value, at least from the residents. So again, thank you. I really appreciate it. I know you did having the funding to be able to attend RSNA. It was really great to not only show off the work that we did, but I think meeting a lot of residents from across the country is a really unique opportunity to learn from everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
That was fantastic. Thanks so much, Nathan. Thanks so much, Michelle, for excellent presentations about for your experiences at RSNA. Any questions or comments from the group, either online or in the room?
So with the flipped classroom, would it be, so they have materials the night before that they study, and then
Yeah,
it would be like a case conference type thing on that topic? Is that, was the model there?
correct. Yes.
I have a question. Is it a competitive thing to get a presentation accepted for presenting at RSNA? How do you do it?
I actually don't know the acceptance rate of it.
I don't know
But
either.
yeah.
But I think a lot of people submit
Yeah.
projects to RSNA,
Yeah.
but
I mean, there's an application process. You submit an abstract, and then some representative slides or figures from your project. And then if it's accepted, you'll, put together the whole presentation. Yeah, like I said, I think there are a lot of applications. I don't know how competitive it is necessarily, but
And I also know that two of yours received certificates of merit, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, that
That's
was.
pretty
Yeah.
awesome. And identified for radiographics as well?
I don't think so,
No
but I
way.
think there were
Okay.
plenty of.
Well, anyway, sorry, but at least you had
departments, yeah.
two certificates. How are those determined? Is it a voting process?
I think it is, to some degree of voting process. I think there are some appointed reviewers for the presentations. I could be mistaken, but, and they do like a review of all the presentations within a certain category. And they, will rank them and assign awards.
So what was your guys' favorite thing in RSNA? Like either favorite, maybe talk you heard or favorite thing you did?
The reception was pretty fun.
Oh, yeah, there's something
That was-
good.
Good turnout, good turnout, lots of alums,
Yeah.
it's great.
Oh, we
Dr.
went.
Sahai in his purple suit. Presenting.
We went to lunch with Li Lu
Oh,
and
yeah, Li Lu.
Dr. Rocco.
Oh, good.
It's a very secret spot that I think he didn't want us anyone
Oh, yeah,
else
he
to
has
know about.
Well, what is
a
it?
dim sum place that
What is
he
it?
just.
Now you gotta share.
It's one of the dim sum places in like Chinatown.
Oh, wow.
It was really good.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's a really wonderful opportunity that artists can make because it's just, I mean, it's just so big,
Yeah.
so grand.
It's really overwhelming to go to all
Yes.
those like exhibitor things where all the
Oh, yeah.
companies are. So it's, yeah.
And it's so inspiring too.
Yeah.
People listen to you and your wonderful presentations. You get to hear about all sorts of things going on in their field. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a great opportunity.
Can see what's in the pipeline
Yeah.
for like new technology, things like that. It's pretty
Right.
cool.
So how much does the mic really cost?
Oh, I think it's like $350 for the cheapest one. I think there's like a fancier one you can get for like to get something more. But you can buy one, a non-power mic from Amazon for way cheaper. Doesn't work as well though. So there is something to be said for the name brand. I think Puneet.
Yeah.
Okay. What is Puneet? Puneet, what do you have?
So I just wanted to say, thank you and kudos to Nitin and everybody else who actually presents exhibits at RSNA. It is actually a lot of work to make these slides. Like some of the slides can take days and multiple consultations with the clinical teams to get it just right. So right from the conception of the idea, where not every idea that you submit gets accepted, a well-packaged idea, 1 out of 3, or best case, 2 out of 3 ideas get presented. I think sometimes our numbers at UW can be higher, not just because, we get lucky, but because the effort that goes in is a lot. And I think one of the things that Nitin, he's humble, he didn't mention that Nitin also mentored a medical student from Colorado who, because of Nitin's involvement and the publications that followed from his work, actually got residency at UNC. So a lot of good things came out of it. Congratulations, Nitin.
It's great. It is. It's a lot of work. It's
It is
a lot of work. And those look like, yes, beautiful slide shapes.
Yeah,
Job.
took a lot of time.
Awesome. Any other comments or questions, either online or from the group in person? All right. Well, I guess that I think that wraps up at least the online component, unless there are folks online want to stay on and converse and chat and reminisce a bit with other alumni in the room. I certainly want to thank, on the behalf of the department, all the presenters today for truly awesome experiences and presentations. These were fantastic, and it was really awesome to hear. Certainly inspiring for folks like me to think about. And I also, of course, want to thank again all the people that made these experiences possible. So all of our generous alumni and donors to continue to support departmental efforts. And don't forget the Chairs Fund to check out that barcode if you have not done so already. So I think with that, I will certainly log off to get back to clinical service. But again, I appreciate all of you, all the presenters today, and all of our donors. Thanks so much for your time.
See who's on. Anybody see who all was on? I think. You guys were wonderful presentations. Thanks so much. This was just so great.
Thank you. We're all set.
Really fun to see what everyone's doing.
Betty, I want to go to.
Yeah, you should want to.
Come.
The weather,
Yeah, it's always beautiful.
yeah, I don't do well with really.
No, we can't tell people the weather is.
I was
like,
you should
get mad at me. I swear. I mean, I've been to a lot of nice places, I've never seen weather like this.
Dar
It's
is
better than
not
Hawaii.
like that.
Dar was beautiful.
Better than
Dar,
Hawaii.
Perfect.
Dar is like a 3-shower a day type of place.
No, it's
Oh,
perfect.
wow.
It's absolutely perfect.
Who did they see in our little house?
Oh, yeah.
Is Dar es Salaam pretty muggy?
Oh, it's like
Very
80
muggy.
degrees and 100% humidity
Oh.
So it's like Vietnam and Cambodia. I
every
guess.
day. Yeah.
They had the AC blasting at like 64
That's the problem
degrees in the
though.
entire
There's
office.
temperatures for you, not burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that in DC, it wasn't as bad, not nearly as bad as it was, it sounds like there, but same thing, where it's like you always had to have a sweater because you'd be like dying outside, but then you go inside and it's like freezing.
I would just go outside, stand in the sun like 10 minutes and then start burning because the whole thing would be there. It was so hot.
Weeks and dishes on the
In person.
Nice
to meet you.
We have people.